There are some common mistakes that beginner vintage jewelry collectors seem to make that will just kill your ability to know if you're paying a fair price for vintage jewelry. But if you can just eliminate these mistakes, your ability to know if you're going to pay a fair price or not will skyrocket. So let's talk about them. The first problem is what I call the trusted seller mistake. When buyers recognize that they don't have the information or the knowledge to make a good purchasing decision themselves, the only option that they have is to rely on other sellers to have that information for them. Now, we all know that some sellers are good and some are not so good, so we all want to buy from trusted sellers. The problem is that we're all human and everybody just makes simple mistakes a lot of the time. So clearly the first problem with this is that if you can't know yourself whether something is good versus bad and you have to rely on somebody else, you have no idea whether you're getting scammed or not. The second part of this has nothing to do with even being scammed. It just has to do with the fact that people make mistakes because we're all human. And we've already talked about in other videos how it doesn't matter if something is $3,000 or $300, because even low-priced items that were mistakes are still overpriced because you just paid for a mistake with your money. So the second issue definitely ties in with the first one, and it's that if you don't know if a seller made a mistake with the time period, and that's called circa dating. We've talked about that before. But what's happening is that sellers charge premiums for any piece that was made in the 1920s or earlier. So if a seller made a mistake with the time period, now you're paying a premium for a piece that doesn't deserve to have a premium placed on it. And that's not good either. Now, the third problem that I see also ties into this whole mistake thing, and it's literally that mistakes are everywhere. They're everywhere, especially on the internet. And a lot of us are using the internet and third-party platforms that are selling platforms like eBay, Etsy, 1stDibs, Ruby Lane to get the research that we need. And we're using all of that information to try to figure out what to pay. The problem is that so many of those listings are just flat out wrong. So that means that we're using wrong information to try to figure out what to pay, and that's just not helping us. So if you don't know which of those listings are correct and which ones are wrong, you're never going to know what to pay. And I always say you have to know what you're paying for before you can know what to pay. Makes sense, right? I have been a vintage jewelry buyer and collector for 25 years, and these are just some of the mistakes that I see beginner vintage jewelry collectors make. Now remember, if you can eliminate mistakes, your ability to know if you're paying a fair price or not is literally going to skyrocket. But you have to be aware of mistakes first to know what things to avoid. So if you don't want to pay for other people's mistakes with your money, then grab the link that's in this video. It talks about the common mistakes that beginner vintage jewelry collectors make and what you can do about them.